The Middle East is changing, whether we want it to or not. The more Iran is allowed to direct the transformation of the Middle East, the more the region is likely to emerge worse off, more violent, chaotic, and aligned against U.S. interests. It's incumbent upon the United States to confront Iran in order to stop them from threatening America's allies, exacerbating conflict, and undermining America's interests in the region. The Trump administration's strategy so far focuses exclusively on the Iranian nuclear threat. But to achieve America's goals, Trump must take major steps to address the problems of the Middle East in ways that suit both American and Arab interests. Syria and Iraq furnish the best opportunities to do so. In Syria, Iran has tied itself to the unpopular, corrupt, and incompetent Assad regime. In support of Assad, Iran may have lost as many as 2,000 troops, including several high-ranking generals. Thousands of Iranian-backed militiamen from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Lebanon have died as well. Financially, Tehran has funneled billions of dollars to prop up the Assad regime. But Iran's rickety economy can't keep up with these expenses, and Iran's efforts in Syria are increasingly unpopular at home. However, Iran can't simply leave Syria. Iran fears, probably rightly, that allowing the Syrian regime to succumb to the Sunni opposition will endanger Hezbollah's control of Lebanon and Iran's entire position in the Levant. The United States should take advantage of Iran's vulnerability in Syria. We should pursue a similar strategy to the one adopted in Afghanistan in the 1980s, when the U.S. armed Mujahideen fighters to oppose the Soviet-backed Afghan government, draining their resources and eventually forcing the Soviets out of the country altogether. For this strategy to work, the U.S. must be willing to arm, train, and supply a larger number of Syrian oppositionists, virtually anyone other than ISIS or al-Qaeda who's willing to fight the Assad regime. This strategy would serve multiple goals. It would force the Iranians to waste resources defending Syria. It would further strain the Iranian economy and the regime's grip on power, which might make Tehran more willing to compromise on other issues like Yemen or Iraq. Eventually, it could force the Iranians and the Russians to jettison Assad and agree to a new, federalized Syrian political system. This is the best possible outcome for the United States in Syria and the Syrian people, and one served at a low cost. Iran's interests in Iraq are deep and wide. The two states share a 1,400-kilometer border, their societies are deeply intertwined, their annual trade exceeds $12 billion, and in the 1980s, the two countries fought the longest conventional war of the 20th century, with nearly 500,000 killed on both sides. This makes the stability, security, and geopolitical alignment of Iraq a key interest of Iran that the United States must exploit. Although Iran has made sizable gains in Iraq, its dominance is far from complete, and many Iraqis don't want to live under Iranian hegemony. The more independent Iraq is, the less Iran would be able to use Iraq as a conduit to the rest of the Arab world. If the U.S. is willing to make a long-term commitment to Iraq, there's good reason to believe that Iraq will become strong and independent, which would greatly reduce, but not eliminate, Iran's influence there. Here's what the U.S. should do. Iraq's military must be built into a force that can maintain the peace. Currently, Baghdad has no choice but to cede control of its security to Iranian-backed Shia militias. Without a continued American presence of ideally 10,000 troops to train, advise, and supply Iraq's security forces, Iraq will increasingly have to rely on Tehran's proxies or else slide back into fragmentation and renewed civil strife. On the financial side, Iraq needs to be more economically independent from Iran. A long-term American economic aid program of ideally about $1 to $2 billion per year would reinforce to Iraqis that the United States is making a long-term commitment to its stability and development. Eventual regime change in Iran will probably be necessary because the current regime insists on defining the United States as its adversary no matter how hard Washington has tried to befriend it. However, regime change should not be the immediate or core goal of American policy. My strategy will be challenging enough. Instead, the U.S. should actively develop its capabilities to wage both cyber and unconventional warfare in Iran, but reserve these tools as a deterrent. If the Iranian regime knows that the United States has a strong capability to threaten its grip on power through covert means, they're unlikely to become too aggressive in fighting back against a new American pushback strategy. Finally, for this strategy to work, the United States cannot aggressively attack Iran everywhere. It won't be possible given the limited resources Americans are likely to be willing to commit, and the truth is, there are places where we're more vulnerable than Iran is. The Iranian nuclear program is one of these areas, because most of the world still backs the JCPOA. Even now, if the United States refrains from taking steps that could start a trade war with our allies over their commercial ties to Iran, we could preserve both the international consensus to stifle Iran's nuclear aspirations and prevent Tehran from restarting its enrichment activities. Achieving America's goals of confronting Iran in Syria and Iraq requires significant resources and planning. But by driving up the cost of Iranian expansionism in Syria and reinforcing Iraq as an American ally, the United States will significantly undermine Iran's goal of spreading its anti-American agenda throughout the Middle East. To learn more about how I think the United States should be pushing back on Iran, check out the link to a series of essays I wrote on the topic in the description below. Also, let us know what other topics you'd like AEI scholars to cover on reTHINK, and be sure to subscribe for more videos and research from AEI.